Bob McCown, it's John Shannon. Welcome to Thursday. Although I probably shouldn't say that, Shannon, because as a podcast, people will listen to this. They may listen to it a month from now, and it might not be a Thursday. In fact, there's probably a 6 in 7 chance it won't be a Thursday.
But even if they listen to it tomorrow before the next hockey game or the next basketball game, it won't be, or the next Jays game, it won't be.
Furthermore, the longer we are in this pandemic, the relevance of the day of the week is pretty much zero. I know I wake up on a regular basis completely and totally unsure of what day it is. One day it's like Groundhog Day. One day is like the next day.
Hey, Bob?
Yes, John?
It's Thursday.
Thank you, John. It was delightful seeing your live face yesterday. Mr. Shannon dropped by my humble abode.
Yes.
We exchanged gifts, so to speak.
Yeah.
Not from each other, but
yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's a good point.
We were both sent things for the other.
I gave you your Haley Wickenheiser t-shirt, and you gave me my George McPhee coach's jacket. I sent that to a couple of friends of mine that work for the Golden Knights. I said, "Hey, now I'm senior management. I'm in the senior management crew." So, and my fear last night was had the Golden Knights won, which they didn't. They lost in overtime. I was going to be required to wear it for every game.
Don't tell me did you have it on last night? No.
I sent George a picture saying, here's what I look like in my coach's outfit. What do you think? He says, if we win.
Well, the other game that took place last night was Montreal, Winnipeg.
I thought you were going to talk about the Jays. Holy smokes.
Well, comeback in the 9th inning last night.
Wow.
Yeah,
that was something. I got excited about that one.
Yeah, Manoah was a little rough, rather, in his rather brief appearance. Still showed lots of ability to get guys out, but
was that four hits in 4 innings?
I think it's 3 1/3 he pitched in total, but just a couple of long balls, a couple or 3 long balls, and anyway, Blue Jays are down 4-1 at that point, and managed to score 3 in the 9th.
They were down 5-3 when Bichette got to the plate. Yeah. And then he tripled and boom, boom, boom.
Yep. Boom, boom, boom. A couple of walks and Blue Jays win 6-5.
You know, it's funny, Bob, not to try to derail the conversation like I've never done before. I like watching baseball outside and to watch that game last night in Buffalo
in the rain.
That didn't bother me. I don't think it bothered me.
No, you were dry. That's why.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, it does make you think that with the future of this franchise, if they should build a stadium that is quote unquote outdoors as opposed to a dome.
Well, I think I've told this story more than a few times. You know,
if I hear Downsview one more time, I'm going to.
Well, but you whether you like it or not is not relevant. But the point I was going to make was that the conversation I had with Mr. Beeston at that time surrounded entirely the notion of an outdoor stadium with a roof that could close.
Sure.
Vis-a-vis
Milwaukee, Seattle, Arizona, all those stadiums. Yeah.
These are fundamentally outdoor facilities, not climate controlled.
Right.
So you can't turn on the air conditioning, but you can cover them.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have no idea what the statistics are today, but I think in the first season that Milwaukee was open, the roof was closed 9 times.
Yeah.
They covered the stadium 9 times.
Well, and
we all know the weather there is comparable to here.
And let's face it, the Jays over the last maybe since it opened, the Jays have closed the dome as a tactic.
Oh God, yeah. Well, it's a closed stadium that they occasionally open,
as
opposed to an open stadium that they occasionally have to close.
Yeah. So anyway, not to derail it, but it was so nice to see the Jays playing a home game, even though it wasn't in Toronto, in an outdoor environment. I really did. I like that.
Well, it's a small picky point, but I mean, the other day when they played their first game in Buffalo, the announcers on Sportsnet kept referring to the fact that the Blue Jays are finally playing games in front of people. Well, not only is that not true, it's misleading because
there were people in Dunedin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can categorize those people as not being, or many of them not being, Blue Jay fans, which is probably true.
Mm-hmm.
Look, the Yankees trained just down the road. The Phillies just trained down the road. When those two teams went in there, I get it. There's a bunch of fans from Clearwater or from Tampa that are more fans of the Yankees than the Phillies. But,
the interesting thing is that
it.
the ancillary effect, that's a good word, huh? Ancillary. The ancillary effect of all of this is that perhaps Buffalo will now become a Blue Jay town, because for the longest time it was because their cable networks there are MSG, Yankees or Mets.
Yeah.
And so perhaps Buffalo and Buffalo baseball fans will adopt the Jays to a much higher level than they have. And as with the AAA team there, maybe it will help that relationship. I think that may be one positive of a very negative situation of not being able to play at home.
Yeah, I can't speak to whether there's an acceptance of the Blue Jays or the Buffalo Bisons as a Blue Jays franchise or not. I don't know what it means, but sure. The more, the merrier.
But our buddy Howard Simon, if you go on the All Sports radio station in Buffalo, 9 out of 10 times they have put Yankee scores and Mets scores ahead of the Jays. And that shouldn't be.
Why? I mean, geographically,
we're closer. We're closer.
Well, okay. We're closer. That's the reason.
Well, we're supposed to have an affiliation.
John, you've got 100 years of Yankee baseball. You've got 60 years of Mets baseball, and the opportunity for fans to relate to that. And the Blue Jays, while they've been around for nearly 50 years, didn't have a relationship with the city of Buffalo.
No, I understand.
So now they do, and people go to games. And
okay,
I want to talk about the Scheifele Evans thing last night.
Yep.
Look, I've watched the play on numerous occasions. It was an unnecessary hit. The puck effectively was already in the net, which doesn't necessarily mitigate that fact. But here's the thought that keeps running through my head. You have a game in which physical violence is not only condoned for the most part, it is promoted.
Well, hold on. Physical violence, Bob. It's a physical game.
Okay. Well,
a body check is a body check violence?
Of course it is.
Well, okay.
If you did it in your home to your wife, you would be charged.
Listen, moment you get into an arena, the moment you get into the gladiatorial philosophy, don't bring. I mean, listen, NASCAR, for every NASCAR race, they don't get charged with speeding, Bob. Come on, don't do that.
Well, you can't have a race without speed, can you? But you could have a hockey game without
body checks. Without body checks, stop it.
Of course you could.
Stop it.
You could. I'm not promoting it.
Just stop.
You're being an obstinate old man now.
No,
you're listen to the point.
Oh, come on. You found something that you say physical violence. Come on now, Bob. Just please.
Would you say you would say that the Scheifele hit last night was not a violent act?
It was terrible. It was terrible.
But here, listen to my point. The National Hockey League accepts, promotes, condones that kind of action. And when people react, the league certainly, but fans as well, is almost invariably a result of that action, not the intent of that action or the specifics of that action. Was that an overtly violent and illegal hit?
Yes.
I would say no.
Oh, it was. No question.
How? Why? Based on what?
based on the distance that Mark Scheifele came, 150 feet.
Doesn't matter. That's not the point.
What are you talking about?
That is not the point. That's theoretically is a charging penalty. That's a 2-minute minor.
No,
and this guy's going to wind up getting suspended. Why is he going to get suspended?
Read the rule book, Bob.
Why is he going to get suspended?
He's going to get suspended under Rule 42.1, which is the charging rule.
No.
Oh,
no,
okay, Bob.
He's not. He's going to get suspended because Evans got hurt. If Evans landed on the ice, dusted himself off, got up, and skated in celebration for scoring the goal, would there have been a charging penalty? Perhaps, yes. And there should have been.
Sure, there would. And he would have got tossed out of the game. Sure.
Well, I don't think he would have got tossed out of the game.
Oh, yeah, he would have. Yeah.
Well, you could. Oh, yeah, he would have.
You have no basis for that. You have no basis for saying that it would only be a 2-minute minor.
I have lots of basis. I've watched a lot of hockey games as you have, but I don't watch them with blinders on, which apparently you do.
I don't. No, you watch it with those darn sunglasses on.
The point of the matter is that invariably, it is the result of the action that causes the National Hockey League to act and respond. Almost never the act itself. Again, Evans gets up last night and is not hurt in any way, shape, or form. I'm not going to tell you it wouldn't have been a penalty. I don't know whether the referee would have called one or not. He should have, because Scheifele took more than 2 strides and came from a long distance at high speed.
Right. That's a charge,
and that's a charge.
Acknowledging which they have a right to suspend under.
Well, but that wouldn't have been why he's going to get suspended if, depending on because Evans got carted off on a stretcher. And that's what happens. And it happens in hockey.
You're suggesting he shouldn't be suspended?
I'm not 100% sure of the answer to that question.
Which is really your point.
No, I'm not defending Scheifele. His actions were despicable, but they are despicable under the umbrella of rules and regulations that exist in the National Hockey League. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If you allow, excuse me, physical contact of that nature and promote it, then periodically, maybe even regularly, guys will go over the line. And where is the line? The line is a line that we as fans, as media, as the league, it just draws a line in the sand. This is okay, but that's not okay. It's not written in stone anywhere. It's theoretical. Mm-hmm. And you can sit here and say that Scheifele's actions were over the line. And I can't argue with you.
Right.
And the reason I can't argue with you is because neither one of us knows where that line is. The line for you, the line for the fan of the Montreal Canadiens, the line for the fan of the Winnipeg Jets, those could be 3 different lines.
Well, and that's always the issue, particularly in this, and we end up talking about social media a ton. It also ends up being such a line based on being a fan of a certain team or a fan of a certain player. And then how do you measure the public response? Because every person that yells something, it was a legal hit, it wasn't a legal hit, it was a dirty hit, it was a fair play, it was a full body blow. Everybody has bias, and that's where you have to snake through and figure out. You're right about the line. I totally agree with you. I do think that the NHL is a little more consistent than most people think, but then you're going to accuse me of being a homer. So
well, you're an NHL guy, you're a league guy. Yeah, you've always endorsed and supported virtually everything that they've done, and you're entitled to
almost everything.
Well, you're entitled to do that, but I'm not that guy. I like to think that I'm able to look at these things personally and
okay. So what would you do? Then tell us what you're going to do.
Well,
what are you doing with Mark Scheifele today?
I'm looking at the tape 3 or 4 or 5 or 15 more times. I've seen it several times. I'm not 100% sure that it was.
Are you having a hearing?
What's the purpose of the hearing?
It's actually part of the collective bargaining agreement to
Okay, well,
give the
I don't need
give
that.
the player
I need what's if you are
it's part of
if
the
you're
process.
having a hearing, a decision has already been made that you are going to be potentially subject to some kind of suspension. Am I wrong?
Not necessarily, but I would tell you you're in the 90th percentile.
Well, I think I'm in the 100th percentile.
Okay.
I don't think you have a hearing if they're, it's like you don't go to trial if you haven't been charged. He's being charged. We just don't know what the amount is. And now
he was already
charged to defend himself.
Yeah, no, that's right. He's and again, under the CBA, he's given a chance to defend himself.
That's right, and he should.
Yeah,
but he's subject, barring the unforeseen. He's going to get suspended. I'm not sitting here saying, John, today, right now, I've seen it often enough to make a personal evaluation. And my evaluation of whether it's suspendable or not is really irrelevant in the process, as is yours and every other fan who's out there. Because, of course, Montreal fans want the guy's head taken off. And Winnipeg fans say, well, it was a hard hit, and it was unfortunate that he hit it. It caught his head, the contact did, and then he hit his head on the ice, too. I'm sorry. I've got a bit of a cough. In any event, I tried.
So what you're saying that this issue is just symptomatic of the issue that goes on with hockey on a daily basis.
Well, that's all it is. It is. It's not every day because it doesn't happen every day, but it happens with some regularity. That there is a line. It is an invisible line, and it is inevitable that these kinds of incidents are going to take place. Again, if Evans gets up and is not hurt, I think the most he gets is a 2-minute charging penalty, and it's with seconds left in the game, which means, and it's 5-3 now, so it's completely inconsequential. And we are not having this discussion. And that happens in almost every game. But if you hit somebody and that player is hurt, unless it is overtly accidental, the Tavares injury was not a hit.
In the end, Mark Scheifele, one of the reasons that will come out of the ruling, I expect, will be attempt to injure. And believe it or not, attempt to injure is suspendable. Which is a great comparison to the John Tavares situation, because Corey Perry hit him by accident. It wasn't an attempt to injure.
That's right. That was my point.
Mark Scheifele did go at Evans.
Well, the intent to hit him. But did he have an intent to injure? Now, intent, we've had this.
You can't measure intent. You can't measure intent.
You cannot measure intent. You cannot be sure of anything when it comes to the word intent, because in order to do that, you'd have to rewind the tape in some guy's brain, and we are at current not able to do that. So
don't give anybody any ideas.
We spent all of this time so far talking about hockey, and we're not going to do that for the rest of this conversation, I don't think. No. My friend Matt Devlin will join us. The NBA playoffs are ongoing. The Raptors are doing nothing, like the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, but look, what about Danny Ainge leaving? What about LeBron James on the verge of elimination?
These are the things we will discuss.
Yes.
Patience, my friend.
I have none, Bob.
I have less than you. We will come back with more when the program continues after these messages. We are back. The argument has been postponed for the time being.
Bob's
it wasn't exactly fisticuffs. It was, but it was a dispute.
Full body blows.
Well, as is allowed in podcasting, I believe.
That's right. Suspendable.
Check the rules.
But yeah, that's right.
34-1.
I was going to say 42-1. You beat me to it.
It's McCowan and Shannon, and look at the cat dragged in. It's Matty-D, Matt Devlin, who's well, I forget. Did we say you're gonna? We can tell people where you are or not? Yeah, are you hiding?
No, I'm
You're not in the witness protection program or anything?
No, I'm down in the U.S. actually visiting family. I hadn't seen my folks in quite some time, as both of you know, and my wife hadn't seen her family in quite some time, as all of us are going through this, right? And and so my brother had been helping out with my parents. They're, kind of at that age. And so, as soon as the Raptor season ended, just, felt it was important to get down and see some loved ones. And so, that's what I've been able to do. Went out and, been here, now for a couple of weeks, and spending time with family. And I
Nice.
think we all can value that, right, at this time. So,
Well,
Hey,
and
Matt,
you're a
Matt,
beautiful
let's
part of the
listen.
country
Hey,
too.
Matt, Bob's of that age too. You didn't visit him.
that's only because I wasn't allowed to go to his palatial estate. As you can see, I'm in a cabin here. His palatial estate is a whole. They don't let me on the grounds.
Oh, I see.
The palatial estate will belong to someone else shortly. So if you're going to come by, you better hurry the hell up. And you're in one of my favorite parts of the country. I must say, I love Southern Connecticut. In the Mystic area, and
Yeah.
you're close enough to New York to scoot down there if you want to, for a day, even for an evening. You can jump on the train, and it's really nice there. I'm envious. Not much has happened with the Raptors. Just to get this out of the way at the beginning here, not much has happened since the regular season ended. As you have had an opportunity to digest the course of this season, when do you think we start to find out what the plan is for next year, both with Masai and with the team? Do they wait? I assume they wait until the playoffs are over. Yes.
Yes, I mean, I think that's something that will roll out here as we head towards the NBA draft. The Raptors are going to be operating out of, the Tampa area, because it makes sense, right? Everything is there, so they'll have pre-draft camp workouts, and they'll have players come in there. But I think that will unfold. I think that there's a chance, that Kyle does return. I do believe, and I think we're seeing this. John and Bobcat, we're seeing this in the playoffs right now. Everybody says that the NBA is about one player. If you have the one player, it's not. There, you have to have depth, and you have to have the right people around that one player, or two players, or three players. We saw that when the Raptors won the title. I think that this team is a lot further along than last season would tell you, and I think. We've all talked about the reasons why, and people may look at it as excuses, but it's the reality of what happened and to the Raptors. And then I think, as Masai said, and this is the thing that I admire so much about him, is that he's not there to be in a play-in round, right? He wants to win it all. And, he clearly, along with Bobby Webster, assessed that, what this year is just, this year with everything going on, we're not going to win it all. And so, what, let's go ahead and, let's pull back, let's take a look, and let's now move forward. So it's a team that I believe is still extremely close. If you end up bringing Kyle back, you add a piece here or there, it's a team that I believe, can still be in that mix with Brooklyn and Milwaukee and Philadelphia for sure. So I think that all of that will emerge. All of that will be played out over the course of the next, month or so.
The two LA teams that are still in this.
For now.
I'm sorry, John?
For now.
Yeah, well, that's the point.
Yeah.
Were considered favorites last year.
Yeah.
And simultaneously would be among the teams that would be considered favorites this year. And both of them are in peril.
Yeah.
Which of the two is more surprising?
Well, I think that the Lakers is health driven, right? I think it boils down to Anthony Davis not being healthy. I would say also that, they did lose some surrounding cast, right? They did lose a Danny Green, and I know, he wasn't, buckets every single night during the playoffs last year, but he's a presence that you have to guard on the scouting report. And they also had Dwight Howard, who's now in Philadelphia, right? So they did lose a little bit of that. And but not having Anthony Davis. So again, goes back to, well, you have LeBron, yet but you still need depth. You need Anthony Davis to be healthy. The Clipper thing, I often wonder, and, how do you know? I often wonder if Kawhi thought, geez, things are pretty good in Toronto, because he had a tremendous group of players around him that the Clippers don't have, even with Paul George and all of his accolades and how good of a player he is. So which one's more surprising? I quite honestly, I don't think either of them are that surprising, Bob. And that's because injuries with the Lakers, and then also the Clippers, this has been something that we've seen before from them. So I'm not surprised. And Luka Doncic is the real deal. He
Sure.
is the real deal. But we also know how difficult it is to close games out, right? And so close series outs. And so this will be a grand test for him. But I am a huge fan of Luka Doncic, and I've said this more times than I can remember, that imagine the Phoenix Suns with Luka Doncic and Devin Booker and now Chris Paul. He's and DeAndre Ayton's a great, player. But with the way the league has gone, a player like Doncic, or imagine Atlanta, and I know Trae Young is an exceptional player as well. But Doncic he's turned pro at 13, 14 years of age, and he's big and strong, and he can shoot, and he's a dangerous player.
This is the NBA has been such a copycat league over the last couple of decades. You get a big three, everybody's going to get a big three. You're gonna play with your friends. You're gonna do that. But are we seeing another change now again? Another evolution of this league when you look at how successful Phoenix has been, how Utah has kind of taken it to another step in a different manner. Is there a chance that the NBA goes away from, the superstars playing together and trying to win with what I would describe as maybe a lesser second group because of salary issues?
Yeah, well, look, it's I don't know yet, because I think, Brooklyn is still there, and you can, certainly talk about Philadelphia and the depth that they have, and Milwaukee, the depth that they have. Atlanta is an extremely deep team. Trae Young is a dynamic player, but they did a great job signing Bogdanovich, Gallinari, John Collins. I mean, the list goes on. They really stepped up over the course of the offseason to provide some depth and shooting, and Herter, who's a draft pick. So I don't know, John, if that, if we'll see that. I think that there's a limited number. Let's be honest. There's a limited number of players that really move the needle when it comes to that, right? It just so happens that, Brooklyn has, three of them, and, the Lakers have two. One of them's injured right now. The Clippers have one. And then Utah's done a great job. I think, Donovan Mitchell is just he's a spectacular player. So, and they've, again, they have shooting around him, and you got a big in the middle that can rim run, that can defend. So that, they've done a heck of a job there. But I don't know if we're there yet, right? Okay. But to your point, and this is something that, as we know, is, something that we see in hockey as well, that when you go through the contracts and when you go through each roster, we see, there is that clump at the top, right? And then there's that significant drop, and then you're filling out your roster.
That's kind of my point.
Yeah. And you're filling out, and we're seeing that across the board for sure, John. Like in Milwaukee's a prime example, right? They have, three players that are up there, and then there's that significant drop. And by the way, those players are playing key roles on these teams, right? Because you need that in this salary cap world where the money is going to the big money, right, is going to those top 2-3 guys on each team.
I know I brought this up before, and at the risk of being repetitive, not quite a year ago when the NBA came back after the shutdown, the COVID shutdown, and they created this 8-game kind of mini regular season before the playoffs, but not letting everybody in. The Phoenix Suns were a team that only got into that because they had a mathematical chance of still making the playoffs. The Phoenix Suns, lest anybody forget, won all 8 games.
Yeah,
I believe they were the only team to run the table and still didn't get in to the playoffs out of circumstance. And many, myself included to some extent, kind of disregarded that as maybe some kind of a fluke or whatever. Although I did make mention, we better keep our eyes on Phoenix because they were playing for something, and they played hard and they played well and they won games. Now, maybe the opposition wasn't playing for the same thing they were, and this year they come out and they have a really good regular season. And now they're on the verge of winning a playoff round. This is a real good team, and a team that is still pretty young. And
except for the old man.
Well, except for one guy who is, leading the charge, but this is a pretty good team, Matty-D.
It is. And I would say this, that after years of living in the lottery, right, you hope that you make some decisions along the way. And let's not forget that Devin Booker is, still young, was taken at the end of the lottery, but really, is a, special player. And Ayton was taken number 1 overall. He fills that, that role of being a rim protector and, being able to, roll to the rim on the offensive end, playing the pick and roll game, which is important when you have Chris Paul. And so I think the addition of Monty Williams cannot be understated in this. I think he has brought stability. And then, credit Chris Paul, who, after things didn't go well in Houston, went to Oklahoma City and embraced that role in Oklahoma City. And now here he is in Phoenix doing it once again and playing, exceptional basketball. And it's good to see because, the Phoenix Suns, before, we always talked about their destination spot. Phoenix was one of those spots, as we know, right?
I mean,
People, went for us that, grew up watching the NBA, whether it be the 70s, 80s, and into the, the 90s, early 90s, they had great teams, great fan base. It was a destination spot, players wanted to go and play there. And then, obviously they struggled. And sometimes, as we also know too, that it takes a while sometimes for an organization to find themselves again. And you think along the way you're making the right decisions, but then sometimes, they're not. But yet, you hire, good people and you draft well, and eventually things will, turn around. And I think that, along with the addition of a Chris Paul, has really elevated them. And it's great to see the Suns back in the mix.
You talked about Monty Williams and you talked about Chris Paul, and Chris Paul's been he's been a little lame in the playoffs. I mean, hurt. And yet it was fascinating to hear him talk after one of the last games, saying that Williams was going to not dress him, was going to put him on the bench. And Paul insisted, oh, no, I'm playing. A relationship like that of a veteran player and a new coach is an interesting one. That's an interesting dynamic that the coach would be able to allow Chris Paul to play, and not only play, he played great that game. That to me speaks volumes of where this team has come from, don't you think?
Trust, right? Trust, and having that conversation, and looking into the eyes, right? I've had those conversations with Nick Nurse just about his players at times, and getting a sense and a feel for it's like it's like when the manager goes out to, the mound, right, and looks in the, okay, hey, you want this guy? Okay, you want this guy? Okay, we're going to let you, we're going to let you do this. And so, those moments do happen. And when they're in the playoffs and they happen, it's also one of those things that could really rally a team too, right? You kind of like, yeah, and so again, as I said, I think it's a great marriage with Chris Paul there and Monty and then the younger players that they have. And, Monty has his experience from New Orleans and as a head coach and he's gone through so much that you just feel good about, the Suns.
Do you think that's the role that Kyle could play for this Raptor organization?
Well, I think,
or does he already?
Yeah, I think he does already. And I think that, again, as I said, that, this is a roster, I believe that, Raptors back in Toronto, Raptors with fans, this is not only a playoff team, but it's an upper echelon Eastern Conference team. And, there was growth with Pascal, there was growth with OG, there's growth with, Fred VanVleet. We know that, that there was a question mark in the middle. I think that that's something that, they, saw, they addressed it. I think it's also really fascinating. You think about, how good is this offense? That players are putting up numbers that they haven't, put up before, right? But it's all based on what you do defensively. And so, Kem Birch was, great, and Freddie Gillespie, Gilly, as they call him, and he was, a great find for them in the middle, brought energy, and that was important. And I like the Gary Trent Jr. Deal, and so I think also now gets into a little bit of a bigger discussion with specifically to the Raptors, is that do not discount the summertime development that they did not have last season because of the pandemic with Malachi Flynn and Jalen Harris. He showed, some exceptional skills.
But in fairness, nobody had that, Matt. In fairness, nobody had that.
Nobody had that, but right. But I would just, I'll just say that, when you look at organizations that do a really good job of developing players, I think we all agree Raptors are in the top three. I do, as both of in any sport, in any organization or any league, you look around and there's those that can develop and those that just don't. But you're right, a lot of teams didn't have that ability. But I think the Raptors team is right back in the mix, and I think if Kyle ends up staying, I think he continues to play that pivotal role that he has always played. And I don't think, and I thought it was really interesting, Norman Powell, I think we talked about this before, but when he got traded to Portland, he came out in the Players Tribune and talked about how, Kyle and DeMar took him out and took some rookies out and, took him shopping. And, Kyle's one of those guys where he plays hard every single night, as we know. And then when it comes time at U.S. Thanksgiving or Christmas, and you're looking for, somebody to get the group together, Kyle's the one that's getting the group together.
Right.
And that's, that's important.
We're going to take the break. We'll come back with more. Matt Devlin is with us back after these messages. It's Bob McCowan. It's John Shannon. It's Matt Devlin. Let me ask you about, this is not necessarily pertinent in the midst of this pandemic, but it appears as though we are headed for relative normalcy by the time this fall comes by, and probably in all sports. How do you feel about reseeding in the playoffs? And just for clarity for everybody watching or listening, one plays 8 out of the gate. Should one then play the worst seed in round 2 and then again in round 3? And isn't that, I guess I'm giving my opinion off the top, isn't that the fairest way and the best way to encourage people to pay attention to the regular season, because ultimately those standings have importance, significant importance.
Is
How do you
that
feel about it?
well, is that a discussion within just conferences, or is that
Across the board? I think
across the board?
I think
Get away with
well,
conferences?
at least I don't know. I'm opening that up.
Yeah,
Traditionally East and West.
yeah.
Well, you
So
do
you go
you do
1-8,
that because
but maybe you go
do that.
116.
Travel.
But
It's a
but you
travel.
do it 1-8 because you normally have an imbalanced schedule. You play
Right.
more games against Eastern Conference teams than you do against the West.
I'll buy that.
And then the East and the West, to me, becomes travel. Look at when you look at baseball, I was one of those that enjoyed the American League playing in the American League and the National League playing in the National League, and those days are long gone. As we know, divisions in basketball, as we also know, really
They don't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything other than the fact that you're playing teams within your division more. And as we know, the Atlantic Division is a really good division now. So I'm not necessarily one for a reseed. I think that you have to put a level of importance on the regular season. I think that the team that finishes first earns that right, and so you go 1-8, but then you still have 2-7 and 3-6 and 4-5, and I'm good with that. The interesting debate's going to be this play-in, and is it something that is worthy to continue on? And then the other debate that is now popping up once again is this within the regular season, the idea in the NBA of starting a tournament, right? Of having this, tournament play happening. So the play-in, I can see a value there. And because I think it puts, it makes it a little bit more difficult to say, okay, hey, we're out of the mix this year, because you can always be in the mix, right? From a play-in perspective. But I'm a little bit indifferent to it. I can see where they would want to do it. I think it, maybe it helps, from teams tanking. So I can see the value there. The idea of an in-season tournament, I know a lot of great leagues do it around the world. I don't know if I'm there yet with that one. Again, I'm a little bit of a traditionalist, but understand that that's in the construction of a season and a schedule. But I understand the fluidity of it and the television aspect of it.
How do you feel about the reseed question, John?
Well, I think you have to reward the teams that are seeded higher to play the lesser teams in the playoffs, so that if for instance, 1 versus 8 and 1 wins, then it plays whoever the lowest seed is next. The problem becomes is what networks and what league offices have tried to do across the board. And this has been a discussion in the NHL as well, is that for some silly reason, they want to be able to say, so the winner of this team plays this. They want to simplify it for bracket. Not the hardcore fan. Yeah. They want to do the bracket. They want to simplify it, not for the hardcore fan, because the hardcore fan will watch anyway. They want to simplify it for the casual fan, to say that, if the Winnipeg Jets, and it's the irony of it this year in the NHL is that they have been able to do it with this system, because the winner of Montreal versus Winnipeg does play the winner of Colorado versus Vegas, just because of the amount of points each team has. And so it does create a little bit more of an awareness as the playoffs go on. But what you're doing every time you do that is you diminish the value of the regular season. And the regular season, we have taken for granted in so many ways, in so many sports. We do it all the time.
Don't you think that reseeding actually adds value to the regular season?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I think it should be reseeded all the time.
And would you go 1 through 16?
The only, in my opinion, the only way you do that is if you have a balanced schedule, Bob. If you have a balanced, and that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Because listen, when we look at any sport, our buddy Lou Lamoriello, he wanted to play when he was at the Devils. He wanted to play the Rangers 16 times.
No, I get it.
He wanted to play they want to be able to sell tickets. They want to be able to create rivalries within their own regions.
I get it.
And so you can't have both. You can't have both. I mean, the NHL has done it, and it was abysmal failure for 3 years, and they went away from it.
The point I think I'm trying to make here, Matty-D, is I think all leagues should aspire to have the two best teams, assuming they progress. The two best teams have the opportunity to meet in the championship game. And as long as you break it down by conference, you can't guarantee that.
Mm-hmm.
It's an impossibility. You could have the two best teams in one conference. You could have the 3 or 4 best teams in one conference.
Yep.
And in fact, we have seen that a lot in the NBA, where you could make the argument that the 2 or 3 best teams in the NBA were all in the Western Conference. So they were going to meet invariably. 2 of them were going to meet in the semifinal.
Well, think about the NHL right now with Vegas and Colorado.
And Colorado, yeah.
I mean, they're meeting in the second round.
But this year, I'd like to think this year is an anomaly.
I think you're right.
This year this was convenience. 56 games, travel was an issue. This is an anomaly.
I will say this, once you get into the whole 1 through 16 conferences move aside, the issue then does become, travel. Right. There is some travel piece to that, that is legitimate, right. Based upon, where, if a team's in the Eastern time zone and then all of a sudden you got a 7-game series and you're going back and forth west, and you're in the second round. But
honestly, I couldn't care less, Matty.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I really, if you got to go 2-3-2, fine, play 2-3-2. Yeah. This is professional sports.
Nobody wants to play 2-3-2.
Well, I don't care. If you play 2-3-2, if the travel is that bad, go play AAU basketball. This is the NBA.
Yeah,
and it's not for wimps.
Yeah,
and if you got to go from coast to coast 3 times in the course of a series,
yeah. Oh no, I don't think anybody should mind the travel.
Yeah,
I agree with that part.
If you even have to add an extra day between games in a series, that's not going to ruin my life.
Yeah.
No, but then you'll complain about how the schedule's been dragged out, Bob.
No, I'll complain about something else. There's no question about that. I didn't say I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I just won't complain about that.
Yeah. Hey,
I want to see the two best. I want to see an opportunity to see the two best teams. That's all.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong on that. Hey, so let me pose something to you. And I won't put names in it yet. So during the season, we kept hearing how an NBA team was underachieving, and the coach was in trouble, and he may not make the season, and he's going to get fired, and he won't be back next year. And then he gets promoted. He becomes the president of basketball operations.
Oh, I got it.
Because that's what happened in Boston. Because Danny Ainge leaves, and Brad Stevens is now in charge after having a mediocre season. And we all talked about it halfway through the season. Has Brad Stevens lost his team?
Well, I think does it boil down to dollars? Because he signed an extension last year. And so I just wonder, is this something, he's only 44 years of age. Is this something, and interestingly enough, Indiana University, that was a job that, a lot of people felt that Brad Stevens would be interested in. That didn't happen, obviously. Mike Woodson, who's a former pro player, played in Indiana, pro coach, ended up there. But anyway, the long and the short of it is, I think that some of this, I could be really off on this. I think some of it is that they signed him to an extension last year. And so, do you let him go? Danny retires. I think people forget too, where the Celtics were when Danny took over. He did a heck of a job for a long period of time. And Brad Stevens, You just wonder, is this something that he's going to be running the Celtics for a long time, or is this kind of, okay, he's under contract, maybe he does it for a couple of years and we're going to transition, and he's going to go back to college or something like that. I don't know. As much money, right, as everybody, a lot of teams lost a lot of money this year with no fans in the stands. And do they say, well, geez, we're paying him X number of dollars, we're going to move you over here for now? I don't know.
Did you ever get a sense that Ainge was nurturing Stevens for the job?
That's a good question. I don't know if anybody had that sense, but I could see where Danny, at 62, after being there for that length of time, I could see also where he was a little bit like, okay, it's time. And I know for, my sense is that they signed Brad to an extension. They owe him money. They wanted to make a coaching change. And instead of having him,
so they promoted him.
Well, a promotion generally should come with an increase in salary, and I'm not sure he's going to get that.
Well, no, because I think the general manager is probably going to make less than, in a lot of situations, as we know, will make less than the coach, right? In certain situations, but I think, look at, people have been very critical of it, right? I think Brad is a really good coach. And I always have wondered about how he handles the room, because for whatever reason, some of the additions that were made along the way just never really gelled, right. And you wonder, you then get into the discussion, is he good with really young players in comparison to star players and emerging star players? And then that gets into a whole other, different conversation. Look at the early candidates that you're hearing. Jason Kidd obviously is one. And he's, as we know, has been a head coach in Brooklyn, been a head coach in Milwaukee, has had success, been on the Laker bench. To me, it'll be interesting to see which direction the Celtics go. And I'm not sure, is it going to be Brad's hire, or is it going to be ownership's hire? And right. I just get that sense it's going to be ownership's hire.
Don't you? With the Jason Kidd thing's an interesting one, because don't you think, like, I'm not close enough to what's going on in Los Angeles to suggest this, but if they really like Jason Kidd, won't Jason Kidd inevitably be the head coach in LA? And it's Frank Vogel that's in trouble?
It's interesting. I don't know how he won a title last year, Frank Vogel, as did Jason Kidd as an assistant. You have injuries this year, But
you don't want to lose a guy. You don't want, if you get a sense that you're going to lose a guy that you think's the future of your organization, do you start to? Listen. That's what happened to Lou Lamoriello and Kyle Dubas. Yeah, that's what happened in Toronto. We don't want to lose Kyle, so we have to lose Lou. Yeah. You wonder if and by the way, how did that work out so far? So you wonder. For the Jason Kidd scenario, would he be great in Boston? Probably. But would the Lakers ever say, well, we can't afford to lose Jason Kidd?
Yeah. And I read about, Sam Cassell and Lloyd Pierce, as well as, two other names. But they, you bring up a good point. It'll be interesting, because if the Lakers do go down, here early in the postseason, what do they say, well, it's just because of injuries, or do they think that, it's time for an adjustment there? As we know, it's kind of what the Clippers did. And,
right.
Doc Rivers.
How'd that work out?
Look at what Doc's doing. Right. And Philly, and, obviously Embiid's injured, but he's done a great job. Doc's a great coach, and Ty Lue's a really good coach too. And then sometimes it's not even, and you guys know this. It's sometimes personnel driven too. Think of what Nate McMillan is doing in Atlanta. He's done, clearly they felt organizationally that they need to make a move away from Lloyd, who's considered to be a really good, young coach. And, you had Nate McMillan, who has been there before, done it, and he's done a heck of a job. He's done a tremendous job. And you think of the personnel that they've added, so it's interesting. It's an interesting conversation. We'll see kind of how it all plays out. But my feel on the Brad Stevens is that they gave him an extension last year in the bubble, if you guys recall. And so I think that maybe instead of just letting him go and there's offsets, as we know, in these deals, but if you're paying somebody an exorbitant amount of money, you might be thinking, geez, now is not the time to take that on. I don't know.
There's only offsets if you get another job, Matt.
There's only an offset, right? And there was conversation always, with Brad and Duke, right? And we know Coach K stepping aside, and they've already named, the heir apparent and John Shire, one of the owners of the Celtics is very close to the Duke program. So, there's people always saying, well, maybe he's a guy that goes there, but, now the Indiana job's already, so it'll be interesting. Maybe he says, I'm going to step back for a couple of years, oversee it. And then, he'll be coaching on the sidelines again, whether it's college or the NBA. We'll wait and see.
Enjoy your time in Southern Connecticut, and we'll probably leave you alone for a little while here.
We didn't even get into the NHL or the OHL draft that's coming up, and I mean, there's so many.
Anybody we know in it?
Well, the projected number one OHL pick is actually from outside of Buffalo, New York. Young player by the name of Quentin Musty, who played for the New Jersey Avalanche this past year.
And by the way, this is our junior hockey scout, Matt Devlin.
And he's six. Look at, he's a center, 6'2", 6'3", 185, 190 pounds.
Devlin,
by all reports, he is a.
Shut up.
We're on in Mississauga. The Steelheads are on the clock.
Shut up.
Come on.
Honest to God.
I am all,
you're not getting paid by the minute here.
Shannon loves this because, we text during as we're flipping back and forth.
Well, keep texting and keep it the hell off of this podcast.
No.
I hope the two of you have a lovely texting relationship.
We're watching NBA games, NHL games, and he's getting the biggest kick out of this because, after, living in Canada for the length of time I have, I mean,
you are fully converted, man. You are fully converted.
We're texting about OHL stuff. We're texting about NHL stuff. I mean, it's all good. Look at,
we didn't even get his opinion on the Scheifele hit. Look at that.
I can't. No, stop. All right. No.
I will say this.
That's it.
I feel for Jake Evans because he had as you both know, unfortunate situation before in a hit.
Right.
And Jake is local from Toronto. Not that I just, you feel for him because he really carved out a great role with Montreal, and you hope that he's going to be okay. He was a St. Mike buzzer, played at Notre Dame, and just it's just unfortunate. Unfortunate situation. So wish him certainly the best.
Well, he's doing okay apparently today. So
good. Scheifele has a hearing, I hear.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Not in person, obviously, but
no. Go ahead, Bob. You can close the show now.
Bob looking at it.
Bob, you can close the show now.
It's a damn. You two guys, you'd go for hours.
We do.
A professional broadcaster and a former producer director.
I'd like to
who
think
have
I'm a
no
professional
concept of time at all. At all.
Well,
what time do you
this
have?
show is no longer on the radio. Otherwise, we'd have to edit the hell out of it.
Oh, please.
Well, not please.
Are we doing
where we are?
Your podcast is doing phenomenally well. So congrats on that.
Well, thank you very much, but it's no thanks to blabbermouths like you two.
No, I'm crediting the producer. I think the producer's done a magnificent job.
Well, he's done a good job of getting guests. If only the producer didn't co-host the show. Devlin, we love you dearly, and we'll bother you down the road, and hopefully we'll see you before the creek rises. All right,
and feed the dog, Matt. Feed the dog, please.
You got it. You got
Matty-D.
Take care, guys.
Back to wrap it after these messages.
Bye.
Well, normally we spend some time at the end of the program chatting about various things, but of course, these two nimrods, Shannon and Devlin, wouldn't shut up, and I'm quite certain that there's nothing else that they want to hear from you today.
Here's the bottom line.
Oh no!
I think Matt misses us. Matt misses talking. And if he doesn't get an opportunity to talk for 2.5 hours during a basketball game, he needs a place to vent, and he chooses to do it here. And you, of course, won't shut up at the end of an interview and have to keep putting in one more 2 cents. And with Devlin, you can't do that because he knows no short answers. There's lots of good questions. There's lots of good questions, Bob.
He knows no short answers to any question. And all you're doing is dragging this thing out, which is what I'm doing right now. And I'm going to stop. For John Shannon, Bob McCown, we'll see you tomorrow. I'm sure Shannon has plenty more to say. Wait till then. Goodbye, everybody.